The top stories tonight in Y News. Joe Biden to be sworn in as the 46th President of the United States of America as outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump touts his legacy on his farewell speech.
Malacanang reveals that termination of the three-decade accord of the Department of National Defense and the University of the Philippines was not a presidential decision.
The vaccine czar Carlito Galvez suggests the signing of a confidential pact between senators ahead of their meeting, according to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque. The Commission on Elections is leaning towards conducting longer voting hours for the 2022 national election.
13 people who came in contact with the country's first case of the new UK variant have tested positive for COVID-19.
And a team of paleontologists uncovers a spectacular fossil of an 8-foot shark that lived during the Jurassic period. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Wednesday, January 20, 2021. I am Harleen Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news. U.S. security officials are taking every precaution to guard against an attack on President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration in the U.S. Capitol. The swearing-in ceremony will be unlike any other in history, taking place against the backdrop of a raging pandemic and profound political divisions across the country. Chris De Leon, one of our USA correspondents, reports to us the details live. Yes, Chris?
Harleen, President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris have been preparing for their inauguration, which will take place today. There's a heavy security presence in Washington and areas around the Capitol, and downtown streets are closed to the public. Tens of thousands of National Guard troops are mobilized as a massive show of force. Last night, Biden and Harris spoke at a ceremony at the Lincoln Memorial, reflecting pool to commemorate the over 400,000 Americans who have died from COVID-19. This morning, the two will attend a church service together with their spouses. At noon, they will swear in. They are also set to visit the tomb of the unknown soldier at the Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. Meanwhile, the first-day agenda of the President-elect and the Vice President-elect is the signing of several executive orders, which include rescinding a controversial travel ban and rejoining the Paris climate deal. Another executive action Biden will take is the mandatory wearing of masks on federal properties nationwide and during interstate travel. Biden is also expected to swear in day one presidential appointees in a virtual ceremony. At past 8 in the evening, Biden and Harris will deliver remarks at the inaugural program Celebrating America. Most of the inaugural events today are planned to take place virtually because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Back to you, Arlene.
Thank you, Chris De Leon, reporting live from Chicago, USA. Meanwhile, last night, outgoing President Donald Trump delivered a mission-accomplished valedictory address that failed to name Joe Biden or acknowledge the legitimacy of his election victory. Miguel Rey De Leon explains why.
U.S. President Donald Trump posted his virtual farewell to the nation a day before President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration in Washington, D.C. Some critics complained that mainstream broadcasters were not airing Trump's farewell address. In his address, he praised the achievements of his administration, such as reviving the U.S. economy amid the pandemic and the efforts to secure the southern border.
To serve as your president has been an honor beyond description. Thank you for this extraordinary privilege, and that's what it is, a great privilege and a great honor. We must never forget that while Americans will always have our disagreements, we are a nation of incredible, decent, faithful, and peace-loving citizens who all want our country to thrive and flourish and be very, very successful and good. We are a truly magnificent nation.
The chief executive still seemed not to have fully accepted the result of the November 2020 election. However, he acknowledged the new administration taking over the White House without mentioning his successor, President-elect Biden.
This week, we inaugurate a new administration and pray for its success in keeping America safe and prosperous. We extend our best wishes, and we also want them to have luck, a very important word.
Biden is to be inaugurated later at 12 noon Eastern Time or 1 a.m. Philippine Time, in which Trump will not be meeting with him or attending the swearing-in ceremony. Trump will instead fly to Florida on Wednesday. The last 2 weeks of Trump have been dominated by the fallout from the deadly riot on Capitol Hill, wherein 5 died after supporters stormed Congress seeking to overturn the election result. Trump had been impeached for incitement of insurrection over the attack, and he was the first president to be impeached twice. Even after leaving the office, he has to face the trial in the Senate. If convicted, he could be barred from holding public office. Miguel Rey de Leon, UNTV News and Rescue, USA. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
In other news, the Department of National Defense will allow legitimate dissent despite its termination of an agreement requiring security forces to coordinate with University of the Philippines officials on operations in its campuses. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana says he is open to a dialogue with University of the Philippines officials, but adds that university officials should explain the presence of students in encounters with rebels. Leah Ilagan explains why.
The Department of National Defense will not suppress the rights of the students in the University of the Philippines to express their sentiments and emotions on pressing issues in the country. DND Secretary Delfin Lorenzana said that the government has no problem with criticism and legitimate dissent. However, plotting against the government is another story.
We do not suppress legitimate dissent. Mag-assembly kayo dyan. This morning when you woke up, nakakapag-tweet kayo, you can form a demonstration there. Nobody will touch you. Ang ayaw namin ay itong mga nagtatago dyan at nagre-recruit ng mga bata, binibigyan ng baril at makipaglaban against the government.
Lorenzana also welcomed President Danilo Concepcion and some senators' call for a dialogue on the matter, but with a condition.
I am open to dialogue with them, pero sagutin muna nila kung bakit namatay itong mga taong ito na kasama ng NPA. This is a list of students of UP from all UP campuses na namatay during encounters with the armed forces. Explain to me, bakit ang nangyari ito sa kanila? Why did they fail to protect these young kids in joining this organization?
AFP spokesperson Major General Edgar Arevalo explains the abrogation of the agreement with UP did not violate academic freedom.
Ayon po sa dinesisyon ng kaso ng Supreme Court sa De La Salle University Incorporated versus Court of Appeals, sinabi po ng Supreme Court doon na ang academic freedom ay dinidefine bilang pagbibigay ng liberty o kalayaan sa mga academic institution na una, pumili kung sino ang magtuturo. Ikalawa, ano ang ituturo. Ikatlo, paano siya ituturo. At ikaapat, sino ang pwedeng mag-aral sa kanilang universidad. Wala naman pong nababiolate na apat na ganito sa University of the Philippines sa pagputol nitong agreement na ito.
The DND and AFP also said that they are doing this for the welfare of the students against the recruitment of the CPP-NPA. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque reiterates that President Rodrigo Duterte supports Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana's decision move, even though it is not a presidential decision. Meanwhile, Roque disagrees that the abrogation of the 3-decade accord of the Department of National Defense and the University of the Philippines violates the principle of mutuality of contracts. Rosalie Cos explains why.
Malacanang reveals that President Duterte was not consulted before the Department of National Defense or DND unilaterally terminated its agreement with the University of the Philippines, which prevented the military and police forces to enter its campuses without prior coordination with the university's administration. However, the palace official reiterates the chief executive supports the decision of Secretary Lorenzana. He also believes that the UP-DND Accord was an act of goodwill on the part of the government. Thus, mutuality is not needed to abrogate the pact, he says. Meanwhile, presidential spokesperson offers his office to facilitate the discussion between Secretary Lorenzana and UP President Danilo Concepcion. The UP community criticized the decision of the DND and alleged that this is another effort by the Duterte administration and curtail freedom of speech. Rosalie Cos, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Justice might end up deciding on the termination of the agreement between the University of the Philippines and the Department of National Defense. Meanwhile, Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo believes that the university can continue to do what it has been doing for the past 3 decades even without the accord. Dante Amento tells us why.
Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara has taken a hands-off stance on the abrogation of the government accord with the University of the Philippines prohibiting state forces from entering its campuses. In a message, Guevara pointed out that the agreement between UP and Department of National Defense may end up for adjudication at the Department of Justice. Meanwhile, Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo said the termination of DOJ's accord with UP does not violate academic freedom. Panelo stressed that with or without the agreement, the university remains to be the sole authority of what courses to teach and the manner by which the same is taught.
That MOA can be terminated at will. And the very essence of that MOA is courtesy. Courtesy lamang yon sa UP na hindi basta papasok.
He added that the 1989 accord has to be abrogated because it is a hindrance to government forces operations.
Ba't naman kailangan ka magpaalam? Kung merong legitimate na operasyon, meron kang sasalakayin dyan, at meron lumalabag sa batas, ba't kailangan magpapaalam pa ako sa'yo? Hindi po ba? Para sa akin nga, mali yun. Mali yung pinirmahan na yun.
Panelo was confident that UP will always be citadel of freedom even without the deal with the DND. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Philippines will import 54,000 metric tons of pork from the USA and European countries starting next month. Joanano tells us why.
To resolve the decreasing supply of domestic pork brought by the African swine fever or ASF, the Department of Agriculture will begin the importation of pork in countries that are ASF-free. With this move, the government is targeting to stabilize the prices of pork by adding up more supply.
Under the minimum access volume, meron pong 54,000 metric tons. So starting February 1st, yan po ay pwede nang angkatin at pwede na po silang mag-apply ng pag-i-import ng baboy mula sa Europe, sa US at sa iba pang bansa na walang ASF.
Apart from this, DA also announced that Ilocos Norte and Ilocos Sur will also bring around 4,000 kilos of pork supply for Metro Manila. This after the supply of pork in the National Capital Region diminished by 30% or equivalent to 4 million. The agency also reported that around 400,000 of pigs have died because of ASF.
May kulang po ang supply ng baboy dahil po bunsod ng ASF, ng African Swine Fever, ASF po. Bumaba, ang taya namin nasa 10%, taya ng ibang ng PSA 15-16%, pero ang taya po ng mga industriya ay bumaba na ang 30% dito sa Metro Manila.
Apart from pork supply, DA is also planning to bring vegetable supply in Metro Manila coming from areas that were not affected by the recent typhoons, which will be sold in Kadiwa stores in cheaper prices. Joanano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And for those watching us on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on the right side of your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook.
The Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, is now looking into various special voting arrangements for the 2022 elections amid the pandemic. One of the options being looked into is the sending of ballots to quarantine centers. Harleen Delgado will tell us why.
With the ongoing threat of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Commission on Elections is exploring voting arrangements under the new normal. One of the possibilities raised by Senate Committee on Electoral Reforms Chairperson Amy Marcos is the 2 to 3 day voting period. However, COMELEC is now leaning towards extending the voting hours and add more polling places to lower the number of voters per polling precincts, just like what is being done for the preparation of the Palawan plebiscite this March. But COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez admits this would pose challenges, including finding more spaces and employing more staff.
Medyo worry kami sa 2 to 3 days of election. The COMELEC is actually tending towards longer election hours. Nakikita po natin sa ibang bansa, especially yung mga malalaking elections, they do have elections that last for up to 12 hours. As far as the 2 to 3 days of elections, there's been a lot of concern about that. There's a lot of worry about what happens at night, I suppose.
COMELEC is also open to include senior citizens and persons with disability for the early voting. The Legal Network for Truthful Elections, for its part, underscored the need for risk assessment for different sectors while the country is still in a pandemic.
The requirements of the face mask, the face shield can be property requirements that could disenfranchise some vulnerable groups of voters. Even the tests that are required before you enter into the provinces where you should be voting.
The University of the Philippines College of Public Health noted that the World Health Organization has guidelines in providing special voting arrangements for high-risk voters, including those who are in isolation facilities. Jimenez says the commission is now studying the sending of ballots to quarantine centers. Voters will also have to pass through a triage wherein those who will manifest symptoms of COVID-19 will be taken to a separate polling center.
Pinag-aaralan natin ngayon yung ginagawa sa ibang bansa, yung dinadala yung balota doon sa mismong mga quarantine centers. So these are being studied right now. Certainly sa 2022, magiging malaking issue yan. There will be more people who will be in quarantine, who will be allowed to vote otherwise. Kaso hindi yan sila pwedeng tanggalan ng right to vote just because may sakit sila.
Meanwhile, COMELEC, together with the Department of Foreign Affairs, will conduct an overseas mock online voting next month. Harleen Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
In other news, donated COVID-19 vaccines, such as Beijing's pledge of half a million shots to Manila, would still need emergency approval before it is allowed for use by the Department of Health. Aiko Miguel explains why.
The Food and Drug Administration clarified in a statement that donated COVID-19 vaccines from other countries still needs an emergency use authorization, or EUA. If the donated COVID-19 vaccine does not have an EUA from the FDA, then the DOH has to apply for an EUA. This is to ensure the safety, quality, and efficacy of the product being donated. Only after receiving the authorization, the DOH can distribute the vaccines to the intended beneficiaries.
Basta may EUA, papayag kami. It has to be registered, no? At iyan ay kasama sa kahit na anong batas dito, di ba? Na nangingibabaw pa rin yung batas natin na hindi natin pwedeng ipagamit sa ating mga kababayan kung hindi rehistrado.
Meanwhile, the clinical trials of Beijing-based biopharmaceutical company Sinovac will still push through even if they have applied for an EUA.
There is a specific population na gustong itry dito para sa Sinovac. I just cannot disclose it yet. Yung protocol kasi is with UST. Pero ang intention natin, kaya gusto nating matuluyan kahit na nag-a-apply na siya ng EUA, because we want to try it in this specific population para makita natin yung epekto niya among us, Asians.
Currently, FDA has approved the clinical trial applications of Clover Biopharmaceuticals and Janssen of Johnson & Johnson. The DOH will announce when and where the trials will be conducted. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Health Secretary Francisco Duque III expressed confidence that there will be adequate storage facilities that can be used by the government once the vaccines arrive in the country. Ray Pelayo will tell us why.
Vaccine Czar Carlito Galvez and Health Secretary Francisco Duque III personally visited 3 cold storages that are capable of storing vaccines. The one owned by Unilab in Binyan, Laguna has a capacity of storing 5 million doses. The second one is in the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine or RITM in Muntinlupa, which can hold around 230,000 doses. And another one owned by Zwilig Pharma in Parañaque City that can store up to almost 700 million doses of vaccine.
Ito yung tinatawag nating main storage natin. Ito yung tinatawag nating central hub storage na later on pagka magkakaroon tayo ng designated vaccination in different areas, doon natin ita-timing from here, shipment from here.
Officials were satisfied with what they have observed today.
What we have seen suggests very strongly there is adequacy of cold storage facilities across the 3 different temperature ranges from +2 to +8, the -20, and then the -70 to -80 degrees centigrade temperature cold storage.
Based on their assessment, 4 out of 20 prospected cold storages passed their standards. The major qualification is the ability of the third party to handle the shipment up to the vaccination sites.
Ang ideal scenario, end-to-end supply chain system adequacy and readiness. Hindi pwede yung process A to C kanya, tapos D to F, E sa subcontract niya sa iba. Mahirapan po tayo. Bakuna po itong pinag-uusapan natin. Napaka-sensitive po nito.
The government targets to finish the agreement with cold storages before the end of January, while expecting the first shipment of the vaccines next month and the bulk projected to arrive by 3rd or 4th quarter of the year. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Malacanang explained that senators may sign a confidential agreement with the suppliers to obtain the exact price of vaccines. However, InfraWatch PH emphasizes the importance of transparency in the prices of COVID-19 vaccine. Asher Kadapan Jr. details why.
Malacanang said that senators must be content with the price range of the COVID-19 vaccines that the government provides. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque explains that this avoids violating the non-disclosure agreement set by the pharmaceutical companies. However, Roque said in an interview that vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. suggested a confidential disclosure agreement between the individual senators and vaccine suppliers should the lawmakers insist in knowing the exact price of the vaccine imposed by the manufacturers to the government. But public policy think tank InfraWatch PH rebutted, saying the government can appeal to the pharmaceutical companies to allow the government to disclose the information, particularly the price of the vaccines, not only to the senators but to the public.
bilateral contract po yung mga vaccine supply agreement. So ibig sabihin, hindi po ito take it or leave it policy. Ibig sabihin, may kapangyarihan po ang gobyerno na mag-negotiate ng terms ng atin pong vaccine supply agreement.
The InfoWatch convener also emphasized the need for transparency in assuring the public that the prices of the vaccines that the government will impose conforms with the general market price.
Malaki na sapin po ito dahil siyempre pondo po ito ng bayan, no? So hindi po pwedeng isubject lang po sa isang non-disclosure agreement. Ito pong mga usapin po na ito, lalo't higit, hindi naman po isang bakuna lang po ang ating binibili at hindi lang naman po 500 piso ang pinag-usapan, kundi bilyon-bilyong piso.
In a statement, Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara, however, believes that there may be a good reason for non-disclosure of the commercial terms, which includes price, competition, and distribution channels, among others. Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
13 people who came in contact with the Philippines' first known coronavirus case with the new variant from UK have tested positive for COVID-19. The list includes co-passengers, household members, and a frontliner who attended to the patient. Aiko Miguel will tell us why live. Yes, Aiko?
Yes, Harleen, good evening. 8 of the co-passengers of the first confirmed UK variant case or index case in the country also tested positive for COVID-19 upon their arrival. All of these are Filipino citizens and they were immediately brought to isolation facilities upon the release of their RT-PCR results. Preliminary analysis showed that samples from all positive cases yielded a cycle threshold value greater than 30, which indicates low viral load. This entails the need for them to undergo reswabbing to secure samples for sequencing to determine whether they are positive of the UK variant. Aside from this, Harleen, there were also 5 close contacts who also tested positive of COVID-19. These are 2 other co-passengers who also initially tested negative. The mother of the first UK variant case, his girlfriend, and a healthcare worker who attended the index case. Authorities have not given details yet on how they got infected with COVID-19. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte reported last week that the index case and his girlfriend did not went home in Quezon City when they arrived from Dubai. Here is Undersecretary Maria Sari Vergere, the spokesperson of the Department of Health.
Ang very close contacts niya ay mga household members nila kasama yung nanay at saka yung girlfriend niya. Yung girlfriend niya initially tested negative, pero nung nag-reswab tayo, she turned positive. Okay? And the mother, nung swinab siya, ang resulta niya rin ay positive. So pinadala na rin for sequencing yung kanilang mga specimen.
Harleen, the samples of the 5 close contacts were brought to Philippine Genome Center for sequencing to assure that they are not infected with the UK variant. Earliest time that the results will be issued will be tomorrow night. There are still 4 out of the 159 close contacts that are being traced. The DOH has coordinated with contact tracing czar Mayor Benjamin Magalong to trace them.
153 of them na contact na natin. Nagkaroon na tayo ng pakikipag-ugnayan with them. They are all now isolated. Okay? So we are left with 6. But this morning, may report sa akin, meron na din tayong nahanap uli na additional 2. So 4 na lang po ang natitira na hindi natin nahahanap.
Harleen, authorities are strictly monitoring the results of the sample sequence from the close contacts of the index case to prevent transmission of the UK variant. The DOH again reminds the public to responsibly observe minimum public health standards, whatever variant is being reported or confirmed around the globe. And that is the latest live. Back to you, Harleen.
Thank you, Aiko Miguel, our health correspondent, reporting live. Germany is now the most recent country to discover a new variant of the coronavirus different from its UK and South African strains. Early Briones will give us the details live. Yes, Early.
Harleen, good evening.
Germany has reportedly identified a German variant of COVID-19 from a group of inpatients in a hospital in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, a ski town in Bavaria. The new mutation allegedly affected 35 of the 73 newly infected individuals admitted in the hospital last Monday. Samples are now currently being investigated in the Schereit University Hospital in Berlin and is said to be different from the UK and South African strains identified. On that note, the new variant is not yet confirmed as of now whether it is more contagious and deadlier. Clemens Stocklossner, the hospital's deputy medical director, released a statement during a press conference that the complete sequencing of the samples are still pending finalization in order to fully verify the clinical relevance of this German strain. As a result, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and 16 other state governors on Tuesday have mutually agreed to work together and avoid further spread within the country. FFP2 or KN95 masks are now made mandatory in public settings, with employers permitted to allow staff to work from home where possible. Stores and schools remain locked down until the same time, despite the many oppositions from the public. Merkel stated that Germany will thus extend its restrictions until February to battle further concerns of the new mutant variant triggering new possible outbreaks, as she took note of the outbreak surges caused by the more contagious UK variant in London. Merkel is determined to prevent the country from suffering the same pitfall by acting as soon as possible. On Tuesday, Germany's Disease Control Center has reported 11,369 new infections with 989 deaths. The death toll has now reached an overall 47,622. However, officials are hopeful that in recent days, the infections rate have become more stable, indicating the successful influence of the pandemic restrictions. Harleen?
Thank you, Early Briones, reporting live from Australia.
For those watching us on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on the right side of your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook.
The Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, and NLEX Corporation are accelerating the construction of the first 5-kilometer section of NLEX connector from Caloocan Interchange C3 to España, Manila, as they aim to complete the project by year end. Joan Nano report.
In its goal to build infrastructure projects that will ease traffic congestion in Metro Manila, the Department of Public Works and Highways is targeting to open the initial 5-kilometer portion of the NLEX connector from C3 Caloocan to España, Manila. The elevated expressway is a part of the NLEX-SLEX connector project, cutting the travel time in NLEX to SLEX within 20 minutes only from the current more than 2 hours of travel. The NLEX connector will have 3 entry and exit points within C3 Caloocan, España, and Santa Mesa, Manila. Earlier today, DPWH Secretary Mark Villar conducted an on-site inspection and said that they are fast-tracking the construction and targets to open up until España before the year ends, while the remaining portion in Santa Mesa, Manila might be completed before the end of President Duterte's term, according to Secretary Villar. Once NLEX-SLEX connector project is completed, cargo trucks coming from ports will most benefit from the road project.
Pag natapos po itong connector, lalong luluwag ang EDSA. Kasi lahat ng trucks na galing sa port, magkakaroon ng option na mag-NLEX or mag-SLEX. At the same time, magkakaroon din ng exit sa may España.
The Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation is the concessionaire of the project that cost around 23 billion pesos. The project also features the use of Super T girder that are more flexible and structurally efficient. These innovative girders are widely used for bridges in Australia and New Zealand, and this is the first time that this will be used in the Philippine construction industry. On the other hand, Secretary Villar assures that the safety of the motorists will not be compromised despite of fast-tracking the project construction.
Ito kasing tibay. It's hollow in the inside, pero in terms of structural integrity, kasing lakas niya yung original. Kaya magandang technology, mas mabilis yung installation, it requires less steps. At the same time, it doesn't compromise the safety in any way.
As of now, the NLEX connector is 25% completed in terms of physical construction, while the government were able to secure 80% of the right-of-way acquisition. Joanaro, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the country's total number of confirmed COVID-19 cases is now closed at 506,000 after 1,862 new individuals have contracted the viral illness. The Department of Health said the Philippines' COVID-19 tally is now at 505,939, of which 28,904 are active cases or people who are still ill. Meanwhile, 765 new recovered patients were recorded, raising the recovery tally to 466,993. However, the death count climbed to 10,042 after 64 new deaths were recorded. Topping the list of areas with the highest number of new infections are Zamboanga City with 206, Davao City with 109, Kalinga with 102, Quezon City with 77, and Benguet with 74. And for the news abroad, here's Kath Dumaraos reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand.
Good evening, William. A Thai woman was sentenced to a prison term of 43 years and 6 months after breaching Thailand's strict law on insulting or defaming the monarchy. The former civil servant, known only as Anchan, posted audio clips from a podcast on social media. The 63-year-old said she had simply shared the audio files and had not commented on the content. Thailand's Majesty law, which forbids any insult to the monarchy, is among the strictest in the world. Thailand revived the controversial law late last year in an attempt to curb months of anti-government protests, which demonstrators demanding changes to the monarchy. Children in the USA are signing up for COVID-19 vaccine trials in hopes of returning to normalcy. Marvy Dauphin will give us the details live. Marvy?
Kath, with more than 14 million COVID-19 vaccines administered in the United States since mid-December, children are the next frontier for COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, nearly 2.3 million children have tested positive for COVID-19. While kids generally mildly suffer from COVID-19, there have been cases of severe illness and even death. And so experts say inoculating them could reduce the spread to people at higher risk. Currently, the Pfizer vaccine has been authorized for those 16 and up, while Moderna is authorized for ages 18 and older. Pfizer and Moderna started recruiting participants at the end of 2020. The adolescent trial of the Pfizer vaccine has enrolled 1,090 participants out of their target of 2,000 volunteers aged 12 to 15, while Moderna gave its first doses to young volunteers last December and plans to have initial data from its 3,000-strong trial of 12 to 18-year-olds in time for possible approval before the 2021 school year starts. But according to Dr. Monsef Slawi, Chief Scientific Advisor to the U.S. Operation Warp Speed program, Moderna has been struggling with enrollment, having only recruited about 800 subjects in the trial after 4 weeks. Oxford University, on the other hand, which developed a vaccine with AstraZeneca, is planning initial tests recruiting about 120 children in both 12 to 18 and 6 to 11 age groups next month. AstraZeneca will then run a larger trial for kids in the United States. Johnson & Johnson also estimates starting trials for children 4 to 6 weeks after receiving results from its adult studies, which are expected by early February. Children over 12 will receive the same dose as adults in the Pfizer, Moderna, and Oxford trials. However, that may change for safety reasons as pharmaceutical companies work their way towards younger children. The main driver for COVID-19 child vaccinations is achieving herd immunity, and Professor Betty Campman says that it is unlikely to be achieved if more than a quarter of the global population is unprotected. Kath?
All right, Marvy, thank you for that live report.
At the well-preserved remains of a hybodontiform shark or Asteracantus ornithissimus was located in the limestones of Sohnhofen, 126 kilometers north of Munich. This shark survived two of the big five Phanerozoic mass extinctions more than 300 million years ago before finally becoming extinct at the end of the Cretaceous period around 66 million years ago. According to Dr. Sebastian Stumpf of the University of Vienna, Asteracanthus' body size ranged from a few centimeters to approximately 3 meters, making it one of the largest species in its group and during its time, in comparison to the modern sharks and rays only reaching 2 meters in maximum length. The Asteracanthus was first scientifically described more than 180 years ago by Swiss-American naturalist Louis Agassiz, who examined the fossil from just an isolated dorsal fin spine. This recent discovery is believed to be the first time that articulated fossils of the Asteracanthus have been found, with the team saying it had more than 150 teeth and was an active predator feeding on a variety of animals. This study is published in the journal Papers in Paleontology. Kath?
For that live report. And those are the reasons behind the news here in Thailand and in other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Kath Dumaraos, live from Bangkok, Thailand.
Those are the reasons behind the news, January 20, 2021. I am Harleen Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.